Hey, and welcome to Out of Hiding, a podcast where we focus on growing in God by seeking His truth. Hosted by Dan Morrow and David Flores. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning.
How's everybody?
Good.
We got Miss Claudia with us today. I'm pretty excited. I've been looking forward to this one. I'm not going to lie. You know, I see you at church every week and we visit. I feel like I know you, but I don't know you.
I mean, one of the best door greeters, lovers, huggers, handshakers we got around this place.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Okay. My name is Claudia Oliver. I have lived in the Canton area for about 35 years. I was born and raised in Fort Worth. I'm the oldest of five. So I guess that's probably a good place to start.
One second. Have you ever eaten at the Rodeo Goat in Fort Worth?
No.
That's probably past
Maybe
your
newer.
time, huh?
It is. Yeah.
It's one of the best burgers I've ever had. And
I've
it's
heard
in the
that.
old, what is it, processing plant?
Some sort of warehouse looking thing or
Yeah,
plant.
yeah. Me and Adam stumbled. Someone told us the best burger. We were at the Baylor game one
Baylor
year,
basketball game.
and they're like, "Go to the Rodeo Goat," and we went. So anyway, go back.
And
I'm sorry.
it was where?
It's in Fort Worth. It's like down.
It's down the middle of it all.
Yeah.
There in Fort Worth.
In the old meat processing?
Yes, it's an old meat processing plant, kind of down, not too far from downtown, but
We went too far
in
away
that
from
area.
the
It's not far from Dickey's Arena.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I say that is that's where my grandfather worked.
Here we go.
There we are.
Many years ago.
That's where it's at. Now it's a burger joint, but they still have the
Wow.
stalls and all that's still intact.
Yeah.
And like they put seats inside the stalls.
Oh, how cool is
Yeah.
that?
It's a good burger
Yeah,
too.
it's-
I mean,
it
they
is
got a lot of
good
other
to
different
know.
things, but it was
Yeah.
a good burger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't go back to Fort Worth real often. And that's mainly because my lifestyle now is different than my family's. It's not right or wrong. It's just different.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of counseling around that when I was younger because I would find myself falling back into those old behaviors that were not healthy. And so that's much better now, but I'm older and wiser and walk with the Lord on a regular basis now, which I did not do back then.
Absolutely.
Growing up, my family attended church. My mother taught Sunday school, but nothing was lived out at home at all. My dad was a functioning alcoholic, and my parents were not abusive, but they were. They probably should never have been parents, and years ago that was what you did.
Yeah.
And because they're not nurturing. My dad was, if he'd been drinking, but they were not nurturing. They were not anything that any of us kids were involved in. They never were there. And so I learned early on, looking to my dad, he was never there. I could never count on him. Some of that was actual, some of it was not. Some of it was some things that were misconstrued and non-information. But when I was about 10 years old, I was sexually abused and told no one. Because back then, who did you tell? There was no one.
Sure.
There was nothing to. So
There was no culture to support someone who says that.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And I think when I think back about it now, that is where shame first started. And that, between the shame and anger, that pretty well drove my life up into my adulthood. One of the things that I was thinking back, I wonder what they're going to ask me. I wonder what I need to talk about. I'll share everything. There would have been a time, though, I would not. I would have hidden it.
Absolutely.
The shame would have, because to me, guilt is about something you've done. Shame is about who you are. And
what are some? I think a lot of people are in shame and don't realize it. So if you wouldn't mind, you recognize it, you see it. Would you tell me some of the hallmarks in your life now, looking back, that tell that you were ruled by shame? What are things that people can look for to see, wow, maybe shame is ruling my life and I don't see it?
I believed that no matter what I did, it was never good enough. I believed that as a person, as an individual, I always came up short, whether it was in school, whether it was in sports, whether it was with family, even with my siblings. I always felt like I never was good enough.
So you could get the biggest award, the best achievement. You could win something that everybody else would look on and say, "That's incredible," and you could say, "Yeah," but inside,
no, it was not.
Yeah.
How could it? How could it be?
Sure.
Because I was damaged goods.
Something was intrinsically wrong with you, no matter what happened on the outside.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I went on to. At this point, I really and as I grew into adulthood, I did not have any memory, conscious memory of having been sexually abused. I just knew something wasn't right, and so I went in and out of relationships. I did that all the way into my adulthood. Marriages, and I had no idea what emotions were. If it wasn't anger, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I just didn't. It wasn't. We didn't see that in our family growing up.
So anger was okay in your house. That's why you
Yes.
knew it.
Yes.
But everything else was off limits.
Well, anger covers up a lot. And I learned early on that if I presented as better than to everyone else around me, no one really knew that I felt less than internally.
So you overcompensated.
Yes. And I did not allow anyone to get close. And I would use anger to keep you at bay. Trust, I didn't trust. I just didn't trust. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was. And my family grew up is that you never said you're sorry. You never say you're sorry. And there was not, you didn't hear the words, I love you. You didn't hear the words, good job. And that was just, it was just me. It was,
Yeah.
I wasn't being, picked out. And so, and interesting, when you said that this morning about me greeting and hugging, we never hugged.
Didn't do it.
And so I never hugged. And even in marriages, I was uncomfortable because that was vulnerable. And if it was vulnerable, then that means I was going to be hurt in some way. Fast forward, I have two boys whose father passed away a number of years ago. He was a bad drug addict. He wasn't when we married, but it's one of those things. I knew walking down the aisle I never should have married that man. Not that he was a bad person, but I was so afraid of never finding anyone that would have me because I was so damaged.
So you were more afraid of growing up or growing old alone than growing up with the wrong person.
Exactly.
You are good enough.
Yeah.
Right?
And the wedding, yes.
Yeah.
So maybe you deserved this guy.
I did. That's exactly right. And I didn't do that once, but I did it 3 times.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Creature of habit.
It was comfortable.
Familiar.
Absolutely.
Along with the rest of that, I started drinking alcohol when I was in this 8th grade. And, that again was the norm in our home. And that became my go-to.
Your drug of choice.
Yes.
Numb the pain with alcohol. No one knows.
No one knows, and I don't have to feel.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the anger, but I don't have to feel any of that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I also made some of the worst choices in my life. So at that point, I'm way, way, way apart from God. Other than if things were really bad, and then it was a 911 God, if you will. Of course, I never held up my end of the bargain. And
were you raised in the church or anything? Like, did your parents?
I never know what going to church camp is. I never experienced that. So I went to Vacation Bible School, and I remember stories from Vacation Bible School, and that's how my beliefs developed, where it was all head knowledge, totally head knowledge.
Never had an authentic heart experience with
No.
God. Just read, heard stories, and it was just this thing.
And went and, did my life the way I thought I thought I should do it. So moving forward, ended up divorced from the boy's dad. Things still aren't right. I ended up in another relationship, and instead of getting better, it got worse, and ended up that this man beat me. I have a scar here where he threw me into a cabinet and ended up left Fort Worth, took the boys with me, and I ended up staying with my ex-in-laws, who were awesome people. And so I was working part-time in this little town where they lived, trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do with my life.
Yeah.
This is it just keeps going from bad to worse.
How old are you when you moved to Canton?
When I was at Canton, I was.
Or after you left with the boys, how old were you at
I
that time?
was in my.
How old are
20s.
your boys?
My boys are in their 50s.
50s. Okay, they're a little older than me and Adam, and a lot older than
50s.
David.
David, yes. Yeah. I ended up. My ex-husband had, like I said, was into drugs. He had disappeared for a period of time and come back from Florida, and he was into a lot of illegal stuff. But he was also had developed hepatitis, and he was in the hospital there in this little town. And they asked, could I help stay with him some, And at that time, he wasn't even awake. And I said yes. And I was sitting there one evening, and I was just thinking to myself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I was just desperate. And I wasn't thinking about anything other than my desperation. And I all of a sudden felt this calmness, this peace. And I heard this small voice say, it's going to be okay. And I know who was talking to me.
Yeah.
I know there is. There's just will never be any doubt. I know, and it was just like, I just felt a release. I felt hope. When I left the hospital that night, I went home and I asked my ex-mother-in-law, "Do you have a Bible?" And she said, "Yeah, I do." And so I started reading in Genesis. I could, where it meant not, I mean, before it, like, what the heck is this saying? It's like I couldn't get enough of it. I just even in the Old Testament, it didn't make any difference. It was just word after word. And then I got into the Gospels, and it was like, oh my gosh. I just read and read. And then my ex-sister-in-law comes over, and she and her husband, and now remember, this is during that big charismatic movement. So it was around. It was
Absolutely.
out there. And
This is the 90s.
and
Did you have a ficus tree?
Everywhere. If you didn't have a ficus
my
tree,
gosh,
you weren't
That's
at
how you
church.
knew you were holy.
Yeah,
That's
holy
how many
church.
ficus trees can you get on stage?
yeah.
Let's put some in the lobby. Let's don't limit it to the stage.
So this was amazing. And so here now I've gone back into my pride and control. And now, if God's going to fix everything, then I'll see about if this guy that I was with will come back, that has beat the snot out of me numerous times, and I kept going back. And so I told him where I was. And that was, oh my God, I just think back on that now.
What attracted you so much to him? Was it still the idea of I'd rather have him than be alone?
Yes.
So that was that feeling.
Yes.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, it was desperation.
Yeah, okay.
But it wasn't a healthy desperation.
Right.
At all. And he did. Nothing changed. And I just I couldn't figure out why. But I was such a new baby Christian. Oh my gosh. And I had all my brokenness in the midst of this.
At this point in your journey, Christianity, all that kind of stuff, did you have a community? Did you have any of that kind of stuff as far as church? I
did. Until he began to put pressure on. Because it was like everything would be fine, and then just like on a dime he'd turn. And I never knew. So it became easier just to not go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I still didn't lose my faith. That I didn't lose.
Yeah.
Did he try to isolate you and do the typical abuser
Yes.
game and just sucked you in and just...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Were your boys around when all this was happening?
They were usually at their dad's. Now it wouldn't be when they were around.
Okay.
Eventually, that was the time I had called called home, and my dad was at work, and I told my mom what was going on, that I was scared, because at this point I'd left and I'd gotten a restraining order, and
So it got bad enough. You went to the police. You got a court-ordered restraining in place, and now you're... Because everybody knows that really doesn't do a whole lot.
No, it does nothing.
So you were scared.
I absolutely was scared. Again, I had a church family that were supporting me as best they could.
Sure.
Now, let me ask you this. When you were there, how honest were you with them about your situation? Or did you kind of front about and deflect about what was really going on to make yourself look more like a Christian
Yes.
and less like a damaged...
Yes.
All of the
Okay, so...
Yes. Again, but what was driving that was the shame.
Sure, yeah.
Again, the shame was driving
Still there.
it all. And I ended up, I told my mom, I said, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. At this point now, I'm living in Lufkin. I'm living in deep East Texas. And she said, well, keep in touch. And I found out years later, she never told my dad or my brothers. And I asked her why. And she said, well, I didn't want to upset your dad.
So she's scared of him too, or in that kind of, or
Well, I think she just didn't want to be bothered with how it would look.
yeah.
Do you think she felt shame too, or would be ashamed of that?
I think that's very possible. I think that's very possible. I won't know that now.
Right,
That-
yeah.
I think that could definitely. They always wanted things to look good. Anyway, so the whole situation ends up on the front page of the newspaper.
It ends up on the front. What ends up? I felt like we skipped something.
I'm like, wait a minute.
She was like, we did. We're
That was a
moving
big
on.
carrot
We're
you
moving
dangled,
on.
and I just jumped out there.
Well, I lived in an apartment, and there were 4 or 5 boys, young men that were going to college, and were basketball players, and they knew something had gone on, and so they had asked me about it, and so they said, well, they had a rifle, and they said, we have that if you want to borrow it. And so I said, okay, yeah, okay. So I did, only on the pretense if he tried to break in. And it just so happened that the boy's dad was bringing them home on a Sunday evening. And he had stayed and was visiting, and this fellow broke in the front door. And my ex had picked up the rifle, and they were fighting, and it discharged into the ceiling. And the guy left. This guy left, and but of course the police got called, and so it ended up on the front page of the
Oh wow!
newspaper, which just
More
again,
shame. Let's pile some more
yeah,
shame on
yeah.
here.
How terrifying is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And
Dramatic.
so he disappears for a period of time, and then he breaks in. By now, I filed for divorce. I'm done. And then he shows up one night and rapes me. And by the time all that was over and done, and he was gone, and we have to this day don't know where he is. I was a mess. I was a total mess, and continued to live in Lufkin for 10 years. In that time, I still continued with my church family. I still continued to grow in the Lord. I say that loosely, and I think it's because I was so prideful, so controlling, because nothing else in my life was, that I would do things my way, and my way was never effective or would work. And it's like God finally, one day, I met this man that had worked where I worked. Was a big foundry, but I just never knew him, and we crossed paths, and we just were friends. We were on the same bowling league.
Bowling.
Bowling, yeah.
I love it.
Did you have a shirt, a bowling shirt, with your name
We
on
have
it?
team
shirts,
Yeah, it was.
matching?
It was
Yeah.
the
League?
foundry was a bowling league. We had a bowling league.
Okay.
We
Wow.
were that many. Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was.
What's your
Loved
highest
it.
score you ever bowled?
About a 270.
Whoa. Whoa.
Golly.
Whoa.
That's professional.
Well, it only happened once.
Well, still, that's
I'm
more
never
time
bowling
than ever happened to me.
270.
Yeah.
I'd be happy with a 170.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
170, let's go.
no,
That's
yeah.
incredible.
I loved it. Did it for years, and then bowled on a regular bowling league, you know, for years.
Wow.
But in this, when I'm seeing this guy, and we're bowling together, it's just, what do I know, you know? I mean, he's a nice guy, but he's not a bad boy. And he's
You have to be scared, though. Just human nature. You've picked two guys. Both of them have been terrible to you. In the back of your mind, you got to be scared of every man because two out of two times,
Can't trust him.
yeah, they've been
Been
bad.
sexually abused.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, and he was not my type. And then one day God said, Claudia, your picker is not worth a flip. This is my relationship.
Yeah,
with him. I have to
absolutely.
tell you guys.
I know
This
that
is how
same
he
God.
gets to me.
Your picker ain't worth a flip. God uses that kind of language with me sometimes.
Yeah. And I got it.
Yeah.
That was the whole point. I got it. And I thought, okay, Lord, I'm not picking anymore. And so this man I eventually married, and he was the closest thing to what unconditional love is as a human. He was exactly, even though I thought he was nothing like I would be interested, he was not what I wanted, he was what I needed. And God knew every inch of that. And so Glenn and I were married, if I right at 28 years.
Wow.
And he passed away from cancer 13 years ago. And it was awesome. I just can't even, but let me tell you, it was not easy because at that point I've gone back to school and decided I'm going to, and again, how God works. This one, I was gonna. All I knew was accounting and office manager. That's all I'd ever done, and so that's what I was going to go ahead and get my bachelor's in. And I took a psych class, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then I had where I was working, I worked for a commercial carpet company in Dallas, downtown Dallas, in the design district, and we were doing some kind of team training thing, and it had they did category things on what you were good at and that, and all three of mine showed counselor, and now I'm getting nervous. And I'm thinking, this is weird. This is weird.
So your occupational picker was broke too.
Yeah. And it was just like one thing after another, and like the employees were saying, Claudia, we're in your office if we've got something going on, whether it's here or at home, you know. And I said, no, this isn't. This is wrong. But yet it was just, it was amazing. I could not. So I started taking some different types of psych classes. And then I ended up, one of the professors was also a therapist. And so I went to him, went one time, and I had such a panic attack I couldn't stay in the room with him.
Really?
And then I knew something was wrong. And so I kind of just pushed that on the back burner. And then what finally drove me, and again, if you said, Claudia, you need to go to counseling, I'd say, go take a leap. Is that my two sons, they're teenagers now, decided their dad convinced them that they needed to come live with him. and be with their dad. Well, they were old enough to make that decision, and sadly, I let them do it. They didn't stay long, by the way. But it broke me. It literally broke me. Again, there's that shame.
Creeping back up.
You are such a lousy.
Pile it on top.
Yep.
Just keep on piling.
Yep. And that was it. And so I went to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Kicking and screaming. But I went. And I'd walk out of there every session, madder than hops. Mad.
Mm-hmm.
Who does she think she is? She doesn't even know what she's talking about.
She doesn't even know me.
That's right. You know?
The audacity.
Yes. But I kept going.
Yeah, you're
Because by
ridiculous.
the time I get home, my husband would say, "You okay?" And I'd say, "No, but I will be." He'd never question me. If I wanted to talk, we'd talk. If I didn't, I didn't. And so I began to talk. And the one thing we had that I did well in marriages was fight.
Mm-hmm.
I could be angry because I didn't know how to do anything else. And you were going to leave me anyway, so I'd start doing things to, create a fight.
Pick a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. But Glenn was most laid back, easy
He didn't fall
going.
for it.
No, he didn't.
Oh man, what do you do
Man,
with
that drove
what do
you
you
nuts.
what do you do with somebody you want to
makes
fight?
you-
They don't want to fight.
That makes you feel unloved is the way I take that. I used to pick fight with
Well,
Dawn, and when
he
she would
wouldn't-
disengage, I'd be like, "You don't love me."
Well, that's a thought, but yeah, just reinforced.
Yeah.
But I could finally keep goading until I could finally rile him up.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Poor Glenn.
he went to counseling with me one time, and after he left, and she said, well, "He is such a nice man, and he has really got his act together, doesn't he?" And I thought, how dare you?
She just picked his side. That
That's
had to
what
be
it felt
devastating.
like. It was. Yeah. So she sent me home with an assignment. I laugh about this the time, guys. I did not laugh. So when we had words, I had to say, "Time out. This is not about you. This is about me.
Wow.
And I am going in the other room and talk to the Lord. And I'll be back 20 minutes. And he'd say, "You won't be back. You won't come back in here and talk about it. You'll ignore it. You'll just be mad." I said, "No, this is what I'm doing." And so this became a pattern.
Wow.
Okay? I'd go in and I'd talk to the Lord. And I had a piece of paper that had the 7 basic emotions. And I'd look at it and I'd say, "No, it's not happy."
Happy, mad, sad.
Shame. And what would happen is the anger would dissipate. And then I'd go back in and I'd say, "When you said whatever it was you said, I felt ashamed." And I began to hook in to the emotions of my brokenness. During all that, we did that for years.
Yeah.
And we never fought anymore. We had disagreements, but we didn't fight. You know? But this counselor, by now, I'm shifted my major into counseling.
So you finally relented and said, "Okay."
Well, no, I was so afraid because I couldn't figure out why. But during the counseling, it began to make some sense. Not entire, but it, and she was encouraging me. And, but then I began to remember the sexual abuse, being abused. And she said something really wise, and she said, if you don't remember the specifics, it doesn't make any difference. It's the emotions that are driving you from it that we need to look at and work through. So anyway, went back to school. Finished, degree, license.
Let me cut you off for just. How long did it take you to process those emotions tied to the abuse? You kind of touched on it, but did you attack it at that moment?
No.
Or you put it off?
No. We did not put it off. We just let it rest. Mm-hmm. And we addressed other things, and that kind of like they all kind of interweaved. Mm-hmm. And in fact, at that time, I was still finishing up school, and I was working at a residential treatment facility in Dallas, and I was working with teenagers. And my client was telling me about this guy in her neighborhood. And as she was talking, it was like it all came back. I had to stop the session and go in and call my therapist and say,
goodness.
I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, good. And I said, that's it? And she said, yeah. She said, what did you want it to do? Because it doesn't own you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's what happened to you. It's not who you are.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
what so many people don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was powerful. So finished up my college, got my license, and worked predominantly when I started with teenagers, because I could relate to the teenagers, the acting out teenagers. I did that all when I was high school. The sneaking out, stole neighbors' cars and drove them around, you know. Driving.
Miss Claudia.
Claudia, not Claudia.
There she is again. And people, you know, they just say, "Oh, you are so sweet," and I'd say, "No, I'm not." I mean, that even my husband would, no, because that was danger to me. That meant you're going to take advantage of me. So I'd make sure I could be angry and you would not be. It has taken me years to believe that. Years to believe. Would any of this played out without the Lord? I don't believe it would have at all.
Yeah.
At all. And for me, the one thing that has made the most impact, I have to do it, continue daily on a regular basis, and that is to surrender. I have to surrender to Him, because if I get up my stuff, it's going to screw up.
Yeah.
I've done it too many times. And as long as I stay surrendered to Him, it's going to be okay.
Yep.
May be rough.
Sure.
It may be bad.
But I love what you said there, because it's a daily thing.
It is.
It
So,
is a daily thing.
Walk us through your daily, if you don't mind. I don't want to pry too much, but I think it's helpful for people to understand what that looks like in just practical life. So what does that look like? What's Claudia's day look like of daily surrender?
When I was working, as a counselor, my day started on my way to work. I'd say, "Okay, Lord, it's you and me. I'm here because this is what you want me to do this, and I love every single minute of it. Did till the day I retired. Loved it. Never regretted. No, I mean, not 1 second. But I said, Lord, I cannot do this, because I can't do this on my own. And every single day, He showed me that He was faithful. And there were things that took place in sessions sometimes, especially when I was working with teenage girls, because I worked with child advocacy for a while. And she'd look at me, and this specific young lady, and she said, how do you know that? Who told you that? And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, what you just said. She said, I've never told anybody in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew, and I said, not anybody, that I can say right now, but not anybody that means to harm you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be stuff like that. It was just, there's no way I could know this stuff. I mean, no way.
Yeah.
Just, oh my gosh, I watched him do it over. Oh, it's just amazing to me.
So it started with just a simple prayer of surrender.
Every
day I start with a
single
prayer
morning.
of surrender. Hey, I surrender to you. It's
Yes.
your will, not mine.
Yes. And then after a tough day, I used to, on the way home, I would roll down my window and I'd say, okay, Lord, here it all comes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would
Give
go
it
and
to
give
him.
it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I had to make that a visual. I'm a big visual
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
And so I did that.
For me, each day, right? I have to like verbalize those words, like, Lord, I surrender to you.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say it, whether it's in the shower. Usually it's in the shower, right? I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna go take my shower, and do that. But literally have to verbalize it. Lord, I surrender to you.
No, I can't do it in my head. I'll wander off.
Same way.
I have to. It has to be out loud. I read a book a number of years ago called Two Chairs, and I use. And what it means is that you sit down. Whether I like to sit outside on the back porch, and I have two chairs out there, and I turn them toward each other, and I'll be drinking my coffee usually, and I'm visualizing the Lord sitting there, and I would say, "Good morning," and we'd just start having a conversation, and then I would go through several steps about what was going on with me. No, started out with just thanking him, just for who he was, and taking the time and just being appreciative. And then I would talk about, what I was feeling. I had to do the feeling thing. And why was I feeling those feelings? And then I talked about what was bothering me, where was my struggles, what was going on. And in the fourth one, I just sat. Just sat.
This is so powerful right now.
This is
so
incredible.
powerful right now because it's real. Some people might hear it and go, "What is she talking about?" But this is real. Yeah.
So that I know that it works. I know it does. If anybody steps away, I know it was me. I have a God that, even though I struggled initially because of my relationship or lack of with males, I didn't trust him. And today, he is the only one I can trust and know that no matter what. So the drinking, I kind of got lost in all the other. It's been 33 years this month since I drank.
Wow.
And I tell myself on a regular basis when things get tough, because that's my go-to.
Absolutely.
And I don't. People can say, "Oh, I just, it just left me." Not me. It's in my mind. Same thing with smoking. When I get stressed, that's my go-to. And then I'll think about it a minute, and I'll say, "Okay, all right, Claudia, you know the answer to this. If I drink, I will die, not physically, but spiritually." And I will not give that up. I will not. And so it's not worth it. So.
There's something more precious than that.
Yes. Saved my life.
How long did you counsel?
Over a year.
You went.
Yes.
And how long did you help people in that area? Obviously, that's a ministry. That's
23 years.
23 years.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yes.
Do you still find that people, I mean, how long you been out of it? I mean, as far as retired,
Completely retired, about 5 years.
5 years. Do you still find your way of help? I mean, and people coming to you, help, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. That has continued. Even after I had semi-retired, the agency I worked for would ask if I would see some of the employees, and did that for a good while, and saw some people from my home after my husband died, and then eventually it was time.
Yeah.
But I will still, if I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
I'm not. People used to say, "Oh, you're reading my mind." No, I'm not. I'm just. It amazes me the human. Each individual is so different and so unique. That in itself, but how God did that, and it's not about being perfect or right or wrong. It's just about being.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I didn't know, because you've been how long you been here at the church?
About 2.5 years.
About 2.5 years. So I didn't know for the longest time your background as far as, I heard your story really for the first time today, but I think it was maybe a year into it, and someone told me you were a counselor, you had been and all that kind of stuff, and I said, it makes all the sense in the world. Because I just have a little conversation with you, and I was like,
There's something about her.
something about Miss
I've been
Claudia.
saying that the first time I gave her a hug in the lobby. I was like, I bet she's a counselor or something like that. I could just
about
tell.
her. Yeah, There was a warmth to you, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there just was. Like, it was like, I could have a real,
you
deep
could.
conversation here
Yeah.
in the middle of the
A
lobby,
lot, a lot of depth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of depth with you.
Isn't that awesome? Because there wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, and hugs. Oh, I love to hug. That is the most awesome thing in the world. And yet, that's again was God, and a husband that showed me how,
Yeah.
and that it was safe.
How'd you find Radiant? Just curious. I always like to ask.
Well, I attended a Baptist church here because when we first moved here, someone had invited us, and we went. My husband said, "Could we?" Because he was born and raised that. And I said, "Yeah, I'm not adverse to that." And so we attended a church here for about 23 years, and
Just a short 23 years.
and
That's faithfulness.
Yeah, it was God really grew me in that, and after he passed away, I stayed there another year, and then it was time, and so I did some looking around, and one of the places I've visited was your first year here.
First year here.
Yeah.
That was rough. No.
Rough, that's
Yeah,
right. Hey,
there weren't a
come
lot
on.
of people. Yeah, it was. But here's what I remember, and that was, I really liked what you said. I really liked how you presented. But it just wasn't settled in my spirit.
Sure.
And so I ended up at another church. Do you want me to say the name or not?
That's up to you.
At Stone Point in Wills Point. And I went there for 6.5 years and got involved with their regeneration program that comes out of Watermark in Dallas.
Regen.
Yes, Regen. And I was a leader there for a number of years. God probably grew me more by continuously going through that 12-step faith-based program. It was amazing. Amazing.
I bet you were phenomenal in those settings.
Oh yeah, I bet you kill.
I love it.
What's God doing with you right now? What chapter are you in right now?
Oh, can I say something real quick?
Yes.
Sorry.
No.
Whenever you were looking again at churches, I remember you and another couple came in. And y'all sat on my couch in my office. Remember that?
Pat and Mike.
And you had some questions.
Yes.
Y'all remember?
Yes.
You remember? They were great, and we had a great conversation. I felt like it was
Yes.
great.
Yes,
You
I
know,
did.
I
We
like
did
because you
too.
were really trying to feel like, hey, is this going to be home? Is
Yes.
this going to be where I'm going to go to church and serve and do all those kind of things? And
Yes.
I guess that was just what 2.5 years ago. You said. Yeah. I still remember that. It was a great conversation, getting there to
good.
sit with you guys, and then you both plugged in, and of course they moved away, all that
Yes.
kind of stuff. But I'm just so glad you're here.
Thank you.
I am.
That sounds
I am
scary.
too.
Huh?
Going up, meeting with the pastor, because my millennials, we'll church hop until we find the one.
They are weak. This lady's strong.
They
Claudia's
came with-
out
you
here.
need- this
She's
is
like,
what
I'm gonna
we
go to
need.
the guy.
No, they came in. They said, "Hey, we need a meeting with you," and I was like, "All right, yeah." And so we got it figured out, and then they came in and they had their questions. Hey, what about this? What about that? All that kind of stuff. We got to have a good conversation.
That's awesome.
Very healthy, very
Millennials,
good.
listen.
Yes.
Conversate. What?
Send them a text, and then
And then
And it was, and that was what made us say, "This is where God wants us." I don't know if it would have played out differently if we'd not had that conversation.
sure, I appreciate that. I mean,
Yeah, I did too.
honestly, because everybody comes from different backgrounds, and been at this church, and there's seasons, I believe, to a lot of different things, and then just getting some clarity.
Yeah, that's
clarity.
all it was.
Clarity clears out a lot of confusion.
it does.
And I appreciate y'all doing that. Anyway,
Oh, great.
side note.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. We're glad you talked with us, and
Absolutely.
I'm here for the duration. I'm not going anywhere.
Here we go.
so back to again. What's God doing? What's God stirring in Claudia right now? I know He's not done.
No.
So tell me what that is. If you know, I mean, you don't have to, but
I think right now where my heart just is hungry, and that is, in fact, I just had a conversation with someone here yesterday. We were talking about it, and I just asked you about something that's supposed to start in September. Are they going back over having the ministry?
You talking about
Oh,
school
the
ministry?
school ministry.
School
Yes,
ministry.
yes.
Ministry,
I was
yeah.
like, wait a minute.
Is it going to
What?
start in September?
yeah. So we're starting the second semester now. So the spring break was the midpoint. We'll go through summer, and then the next one will kick off in the fall. It follows the college schedule.
Okay, but
The
Is
question
that-
I had was, for you may not know the answer to this. Maybe you do. I don't know. Is it going to be for like people that went through it this year go next year, or is it the repeat of what we did this year?
It's not a repeat.
No,
It's not a repeat.
Because I was in my head, I'm like, if you really needed
Yeah.
to go to this one, so
Yeah.
you know what's going on in this one, because you are building like the foundation.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, as far as the students that are in there right now, they need to be in they needed this foundation, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, next one will be different, a little more engaging, a little bit different, little more depth kind of deal.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
so you're interested in that?
yeah,
Right on.
yeah. There's a hunger I feel when I was hearing about it.
It's been amazing. It really has the level of growth that's taken place, and I've been going to church with a lot of these people for a long time and didn't even know them, and just see them come from here and get to here in such a short time. It's been really, really amazing to see what God's doing with it. I'm pumped. What do you think, David?
It's good. I have a story I was going to tell you. I told
Yes.
Dan. I didn't get to tell you because you didn't answer your phone, but that's here or there. So let me whack you real quick. No, I had this electrician come to my house Friday, and I don't know. He just didn't really like talk, or he just, I don't know how the word I need to use. Just was.
Was he quiet? Was he
was
standoffish?
Yeah, maybe standoffish a little bit, and he had another partner, and we were trying to figure out
Guarded?
standoffish, all those things. And they said the problem was with the electric provider, so I called them. They came out. They said, no, it's the electrician, so he came back out Monday. And on Friday, I told him we have a connect group that meets at my house on Mondays, and I was trying to get it fixed because it was kind of doing a little flickering. And so he came back Monday, and he finished, and we were outside, and he was just like, that church group Monday, and I started talking about it, and then he just starts blowing up on me, just throwing up all his stuff about Jesus and his grandmother and how his parents don't go to church and that he goes to church and that how his girlfriend won't go but he'll go, and he just all these things. And it was just, we talked for, I don't know, probably 20 minutes. And old me, I would have shut that conversation down and been like, yeah, it's Connect Group Monday, and like, let's not talk about it any further, And we're just sitting here in my driveway, just talking about Jesus and the love he has for him and me, and we invited him to church, and so I think he's going to come Sunday. He's pretty excited about it. And the craziest thing is I felt like the Lord was saying, you need to pray for him. But the conversation ended, and I was kind of wrestling it as I was talking with him. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't know what to say. And I brought him inside because we had to make sure everything was good. And some people from the church, they cleaned my house. I brought them in there because they're kind of on the prayer team here, and I was like, oh, they're going to pray for him. They're going to take care of this. Well, they didn't, so we all sat there, and I was like, hey, guys, come here, and we laid hands on them, and I was hoping they would lead, and they didn't, and I just took off praying for them, and just really after I got done, I was like, holy smokes, that was a great prayer. Where did that come from? Like, I was just, Holy Spirit, that was awesome. And then I called my wife and Dan. I was like, you come over. Jesus is here. I'll put the hands on you. But Oldie would have never done that. And it was just, I don't know. It was so exciting, and it just felt so good to be able to do that. And now I'm hungry to keep doing that. So.
And you know, I mean, no one can tell you different. You know that you know that you know.
Mm-hmm.
God had, Jesus is like, hey, come on.
Yeah, it was awesome. But it all
There's
goes
a lot
back
of
to-
boldness there. And
Yes.
where does boldness, what does the Bible say about boldness?
The wicked flee when no one pursues, but be bold as something like that. Be bold as a
The
lion.
bold or what?
Huh? As bold as a lion.
The righteous are,
As bold as a lion.
there you go.
Yeah, 28-1, right? Yeah. We talked about that in my Connect group and on Monday too, so it's just kind of a full circle moment. But if I didn't go to the school, like I said, I would have shut that down, and I definitely wouldn't have prayed for him. I would have maybe hit him with the old line, "Oh, I'll pray for you," and left it at that. And never prayed for him, honestly.
Yeah.
But the school has really, it has changed me dramatically. So
Funny story about that, right? That whole "I'll pray for you," because you hear it a lot. Somebody comes and shares with you, you're like, "Yeah, I'll pray for you." My pastor up in Seattle, Washington, because he heard me saying this in the lobby a couple times to a couple different people, and he was like, "Adam, come here, let me talk to you." I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And he's like, "I hear you saying you're going to pray for a lot of people." I was like, "Yeah," He said, "I need you to start praying for them right then, like right then, no matter like what. I know there's certain situations, all that kind of stuff, but like right then, don't just give them the 'I'll pray for you,' but even follow what you just did. You know what I'm saying? Like pray for them,
Yep.
in the moment." And then he used the terminology. He said, "We're pastors. We pray for people." And that's stuck with me forever. But it's not even just pastors. It's like we're Christians.
I feel like it's
We pray for people.
The hardest part is like knowing what to say, and as I was putting my hand on him, I'm still in my head, I don't know what to say. I don't know what I'm going to say, and I just started, giving thanks, and it just started flowing off the tongue, and it was.
Isn't it amazing how the Holy Spirit leads
It
you?
takes faith.
Yes.
That is the essence of faith to me. When you have enough faith to open the mouth when you don't know, boom,
Yeah.
he shows up.
Yep.
It's like this morning I was driving to the courthouse. I had to open got to open the county commissioner's court up in prayer today. So I'm walking there. I'm like, how am I going to approach this? What am I going to pray for? And then I just really felt like the Holy Spirit said, just stop and let me lead. And I was like, all right, deal.
Yes, sir.
And it takes all the stress off.
The pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I always ask, why are you doing this to yourself? You
Yeah.
don't have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He'll lead it.
David, I'm waiting on your question. I know we're getting close to running out of time, but I'm waiting on you always ask the question. I'm not going to ask it because I'm waiting on you to ask it.
So what is your? I think this is the question you want me to ask. What's your hope for the people? What is your message for them? Like, what do you have for the listeners that are like, hey, I'm in this boat right now. I'm in a relationship. That's an abusive relationship, or I have a lot of shame where I just can't break through. What is your message for them?
There is always hope, and that hope comes from Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, once I knew who Jesus was and accepted him into my heart, and he became my Lord and Savior, it all began to change. Not overnight, but it changed continuously.
Wow.
And what I hear in your message too is surrender.
Step one.
For sure.
Can't get it off my mind recently. I mean, I say recently, it's just there.
Surrender means surrender shame too. I mean, if you think about what real surrender is, we tend to hold on to shame because it becomes who we are. We don't want to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's one of the first things we have to surrender is, are we going to let that shame go?
Yeah.
Because the familiarity of it can get you sucked in.
Could you answer this really quick? I know we're getting close on time. Can you? Because some people don't know what surrender means. People throw that out there a lot, you know. So can you tell me, what does that look like? What do you have to do? What is your prayer? What is your words? Do you have to be on your last leg or down in a rock? You know, can you help? I mean, even for me, sometimes I question like, what is a true surrender?
Sure. Well, Jesus said anybody wants to be my disciple must, basically surrender their life, pick up their cross, and follow me daily. And I think we talked about it just a few moments ago. For me personally, I have to say the words every day. Jesus, I surrender to you. God, I surrender to you.
Rookie mistake.
Rookie mistake, right?
Golly, man.
And so what that means, I think, for me in my life is, number one, I'm gonna start by saying that, right? Like, because what I'm doing there is I'm letting the Lord know I'm surrendering to Him, but I'm also letting Adam know that I'm going to surrender to Him. Like no matter what I feel right now, and emotions are real and all that kind of stuff, but I'm going to lay it all down.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give God His place to be God in my life in that moment. So as best as I can, Lord, I'm going to surrender to you. I know I'm angry right now, but I'm going to surrender to you, and I'm going to let you work through this situation. All that kind of stuff. And I think it gets easier, or I don't know if surrender ever gets easier. I think it does. But the more full of the Word you are, that's why I always talk about read your Bible, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just like keep you busy and a check mark and that kind of stuff, but the more Word I have in me, the more I recognize His voice, and the better I am at following Him. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm. I'm a visual like Claudia, and I can just visualizing it as just laying it on His feet. Like here it is.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Good days, bad days, everything in between.
Yeah.
Sometimes the hardest part of surrender, though, comes when things are going well, when things are doing good, and you see God moving in your life, and you see things, and all of a sudden you start to, I got it all together. I spent every day reading my Bible. I prayed a lot. I've got it figured out. That's where I struggle with surrender now in this chapter of life is there's an element of pride that tries to sneak in based on things and based on status. And man, that was harder than it was whenever I was rock bottom because it's so sneaky. Mm-hmm. So that's what I have to guard my heart on. And truly, so I start just like, I have to say, Dan, God, I'm here. I'm surrendering this. No pride. I want zero to do with pride. I want your way, your will to be done because, man, that's hard.
I think about, like we just talked about Sunday morning, Paul, Ephesians 3. He says, and when I think about all of this, I fall on my knees. What is he saying? He falls on his knees and he prays and he just thanks God. What he's really saying, he's like, when I think about all that God has done, I surrender. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that falling on your knees is a physical act of maybe something that's going on the inside of you. I surrender. If I'm on my knees, I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me to get what I want.
You remember the rich young ruler? He had been praying. He'd done all this stuff. Well, Jesus knew his heart immediately. So what Jesus asked him to do was surrender his heart and let go of what had his heart was the wealth. Mm-hmm. And God couldn't do it. He left there sad. And that's where I don't want to be. And I was there for a long while. I know you and I have talked about that, but that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Surrender.
But it starts with that daily. It's that daily thing. I can't come in and surrender once every other year.
Yeah.
I can't do the job I have. It's a daily thing.
Oh. Good.
What do you think?
I agree. Absolutely. Because pride is my worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a sin before God. That's the bottom line. So
He resists the proud.
Yeah.
Gives grace to the humble.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So, yeah. When I say surrender, usually that's the top of my list.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Claudia, you're amazing.
You are.
Thank you.
I mean it. You're just so good. Thank you.
If you guys see Miss Claudia in the lobby, please go up and give her a hug. And if you're dealing with something, tap in to the wisdom. This lady's full of wisdom. Y'all heard her today. Don't be afraid to approach her and say, hey, what do you think about this situation? We're called to do that as Christians. We're all called. We need every part of the body in order to survive and to thrive.
Yeah.
And so take advantage of this. If you're in the lobby and you don't know what's going on and you feel like these words resonated, hit her up. Let her speak into your
It's going to be
to
at
your
the
life.
door ministry.
Hey, let's go. Ministry starts.
At the door ministry.
We're ministering all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. There's so many ministers in this place. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Thank
I
you
just feel
for
led to say one more thing, okay,
Yeah.
before we stop. Because, I don't know, sensing maybe just from the Holy Spirit, that there's people who are listening right now who have been dealing with it, maybe who've just been in the grind, the rut of shame, of pride, all that kind of stuff, and you've just surrendered, you just said to yourself, like, this is the way it's always going to be. I just feel like I need to tell you this, is that it doesn't always have to be like this.
Yep.
It doesn't have to. Like, I think in our lives, it's just one moment of reaching out and saying, I need help. I need help. And it's probably coming from you is where I'm picking it up and sensing it from, is because you are that person.
Yes, because I wouldn't I wouldn't reach out for help. I would not. And there's always a way with Jesus.
Amen.
Always.
Amen. Anyway.
Thank you for coming on, Claudia.
Thanks so
It's been
much.
great.
Enjoyed
Thank you
it.
for having me, guys.
We might have to do a follow-up episode. I feel like we missed a lot.
I think so, too.
So,
I think
would
so.
you be opposed to that?
Not at all.
Okay. All right. We'll let you know.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Y'all have a great day.